initiated around building peace and harmony. And number two, conflict management themes within the communities. And number three, peace networks have been set up. For example, I'll just give you one example about it. For example, the peace assemblies have been established in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The Aman Tehreek or the Aman Ittihad has been initiated over there. So all this is on self-help basis. We know we know the nature of the presence of the donor community over there. We know it, how they are outsourcing it. We know it, what is the role of the local people over there. So these are the type of the activities which they are trying to do. But I think extremely difficult amongst all three is the conflict management themes within these communities, because that would require addressing the issues and the multifaceted aspect of the issues which is actually there. Third is training journalists on reporting in times of conflict. This has always been, it's a known issue, but it had to be brought and documented, so we have mentioned it. Fourth is demand for a greater and a proper understanding of the nexus that exists between social development, peace, good governance, and democracy. I think this is the key, Ikhtiyar Beg Sahab. This is the key. If we have to actually address the type of the despondency, hopelessness, frustration, all existing at the governmental level, it is extremely important to understand the nexus, how they are feeding into each other, and they need to be addressed, segregated, separated, having a fuller vision, but it has to be addressed. There are no doubts about it that there exists a clear nexus between all of them, which I have mentioned. Fifth is enhanced focus on education and skill development for young ones. I think I'll just leave it at this point, this particular point, because when I'm going to come to the recommendations and suggestions, I would be saying additional couple of sentences regarding education and the skill development. But personally what I feel is, and unfortunately what is very clear, and it is written, but a shared and a comprehensive response is missing. So whether that shared and comprehensive response of the civil society is concerned, or the government is response, or the tiers of the government is response, but one thing is common, that the shared vision and comprehensive response demanding, coming on the same establishing the wavelength between them, is just totally missing. Civil society inclusive in this. Now come down to the conclusions. This is based on the recommendations and the findings. So this is the finding thing which I will be. Some of the very key recommendations which are there, and I think there are totally not many, but 7, 8 of them. But let me say that, ladies and gentlemen, before I state the first one, that the analysis of the budgetary priorities, which was done in the earlier chapters, have very clearly indicated a sizable shift of the public resources from social sector to defense and public safety affairs. And it is therefore extremely important that the negative effect on the social development should be minimized, and it needs to be ensured that enhancement in security-related expenditures is not done at the cost of the spending on the socio-economic sector. I say this because this whole conflict-related situation, we don't see it ending in next 1 year or 2 years. It is going to continue. So therefore, extremely important to rationalize and to strike a balance. Second is, with the higher transfer of resources to the provinces, post-18th Amendment, with the higher transfer of resources to the provinces, that is the NFC, and of course the NFC awards, should be utilized for achieving the MDG's targets. I think it is extremely important for the provincial governments to focus on the MDG's target. We are faltering and we are lacking behind very, very seriously. And with the 18th constitutional amendment having taken place and the resources and the decentralization taking place, it becomes even more important and for the provincial governments to take on themselves their responsibilities. Third is that the supply bottlenecks, which have been identified and you'll see in the report, such as gas and power load shedding, affecting economic growth and private investment, needs to be addressed on priority basis in a sustainable and cost-effective manner. We see this and we have included this not because everybody is saying it these days, but because when we were trying to see as to what are the root causes of the increase in militancy, unemployment did come in the forefront as one of the major factors. And employment, I think bankruptcy is one step more ahead. So in order to actually be addressing that, it is extremely important to look into the supply bottlenecks. Fourth is the national goals of poverty reduction be considered essential for the elimination of terrorism, particularly since evidence suggests that people with poorer background are more prone to join militant groups. I'll repeat it. Since evidence, and that evidence from where have we gathered? Newspapers, our own government sources. Since evidence suggests that people with poor background are more prone to join militant organizations, and therefore this need. Agla Lady Raswan. Majority, I would like to say something before that, majority of the suicide attacks as reported have been carried out by young males. There is definitely a relatively higher unemployment rate among youth. The highest unemployment has been reported in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and therefore it is recommended that skill development programs needs to be initiated for youth both in urban and rural areas. The program's design needs to be in line with the demand of the local economies. That is very important. Please, we need to underline it. That needs to be in line with the demand of the local economies. And second important thing which I would like to point out is that the program must also have a component on youth career guidance. Our Pro-Vice Chancellor from the University of Karachi, Dr. Shahana Rooj is here. You'll remember, I remember, we have a career guidance entire wing over there. It has been not there for last 8 to 10 years. So it's extremely important to provide the youth with some sort of a career guidance across at all levels and all departments. Next is the government and the society needs to play its respective roles in strengthening institutions and ensuring the rule of law. And if I may quickly jump to the seventh one, equally important is to initiate dialogue involving political parties and civil society for developing consensus on various dynamics. I think our understanding of the issue is so, at times, I find it to be so superficial in certain segments of the society that they are not pinning on what actually are the causes. So I think it is extremely important to, one is take everybody on board, all the stakeholders on board, and do not allow the brutal division of the society, and unless we don't take all the stakeholders on board, the sustainable peace cannot be established. Next is also required is a multidisciplinary fact-based research to develop a preventive strategy. It beautifully goes along with the one which I had earlier mentioned. I think it is very important to go for that multidisciplinary fact-based research, because what we are doing it, that of course at the moment we are cautious about it, that how do we deal with this problem. But I think what we are ignoring is how do we prevent it, the very making of such a problem in the future also. So it needs a twofold strategy. And I think that is extremely important, and that is what is lacking at the moment. Lastly, I would like to say that, of course, committees are formulated both at the parliamentary levels and other levels, but here what we would like to point out is that the recommendation on the parliamentary, and it was a special committee, word special got omitted somehow, parliamentary special committee which was chaired by Mr. Raza Rabbani at one point, to national security, needs to be taken into account for evolving a sustainable peace plan. I say that basically that parliamentary special committee had the representation of all the major parties of Pakistan, and therefore it is extremely important that those initial 14 points, I think 2008 ke the ya 9 ke the, they can be further developed. I conclude by saying one thing, that is, military offensive against militant is a necessary but not a sufficient strategy. I believe that very firmly. I'm not against, personally I'm not against the use of force. SPDC has a slightly different view. When I say I'm not against the use of force, I'm referring to limited use of force, please let me correct myself. It is important to ensure a balance between the military and the civil search strategies which have been identified by the government of Pakistan. But equally important is to develop a shared vision to escape from the quagmire of terror which is haunting both the government and the society. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Khanda and Mr. Asif Iqbal, for such a comprehensive summary of the findings. Hopefully it's raised some questions in the minds of our audience as well. Our panelists will now be taking the questions. If I could just request you to please state your name and the organization that you're affiliated with. And if I can request Mr. Javed Jabbar to kindly handle the questions as they come. Thank you.
G, yourself, please, go ahead.
Our audience will be there or
Thank you very much. My name is Arif Kazmi. I'm from the University of Karachi. My question is directed to Dr. Khalda Ghaus. When you were discussing the first chapter, and you had a slide up there concerning the incidence of violence, it's to be noted that as far as the suicide bombings are concerned, there's a sudden change of pattern. Right up till 2006, the numbers were in single digits, 4, 5, 6, 7. Suddenly in 2007, they jumped to 56. 2007 happens to be the year in which the Lal Masjid incidents also took place. And if you remember, in early 2006, April 6th to be exact, in the sermon, the Maulana Aziz, he mentioned that the Sharia has been implemented in Islamabad, and if anyone comes in the way, suicide bombing will be the answer and the way to correct as far as they're concerned. And I'm wondering if you think that that is perhaps a catalytic in terms of growth of violence in this particular region. Thank you.
Are there any other hands up? Please. Yes, please.
I'm Salma Waheed.
Salma Waheed, the former Federal Secretary, Ministry of Women and Youth. I just want to say that there's a very important factor which is missing. I don't know if it's relevant, but I think it is. And that's population growth. I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel the way our population is going, that in itself is a big problem. And the way our cities are growing, the towns are becoming cities, the cities are becoming mega cities, and the numerous problems that we are coming across living in the cities because of this population growth. Don't you think we need to do something more about that? I think it's becoming an explosion almost. Thank you.
Thank first one.
Ji, Shukriya Javed sir. I totally agree with my wonderful senior colleague from the University of Karachi, Dr. Arif Kasmi. But as I mentioned even during the course of the presentation, that if you go through the entire chapter, the details of it, we have very minutely looked into the making of the problem as to what are the contributing and the augmenting factors which are there. We have also looked into the changing nature of the violence and as to how the proliferation has also been identified in the nature of the violence and the bomb blast and what have caused it. But I totally agree with you on one thing, and that is there is no doubt in my mind, because in whatever my small little understanding of these issues are, initially these terrorists, the one who were involved with the bomb blast, were strictly following the Peruvian strategy. The Peruvian strategy, which was also adopted by the Nepalese initially over there, where they were targeting the state institutions. But thereafter, what we had seen is that with certain bazaars being hit, Lahore, Moon Bazaar, Moon Bazaar and other shrines being hit over here. So we have seen a definite change that the soft targets are now being hit by them. So the change in the strategy by these militant groups is obviously there. As far as the Lal Masjid episode goes, I will, and this I'm saying it in my personal capacity, please. I'm not saying it in the capacity of SPDC, Mr. Board Member. I firmly believe in it that that is not the cause of actually causing all these elements over here. They were there. They were there. They didn't come out of nowhere all of a sudden. They were there for the last 3.5 decades, and they was gradually spreading the tentacles in the different society, and the different people have been pointing out to them as to how they are spreading the tentacles. As far as the Lal Masjid episode was concerned, again my personal view is that you cannot allow the writ of the government to be challenged by anyone. So I think, and I distinctly remember I was sitting in Nepal then, and we used to get to hear the news that why isn't Musharraf doing something, what is he doing, everybody is doing, they're sitting in Islamabad. And then once when he does it, it goes all together, it's a different story. So the politicization of the human suffering is also a very in thing in Pakistan. But again, I'll say this was my personal view, please don't take it to be an SPDC view.
Thank you.
Well, on population growth, there to opinion that population growth has been a problem in Pakistan, and it has been there has been not much direct focus on this issue. I agree to that. Of course, all the indicators that we talk about, they are related to the population. When we talk about poverty, when we talk about education, and all, it's cyclical process. For example, we see that the population growth rate is much higher in the lower income groups. Then we see that the education is less in those groups. So when there is growth of poor, then there is a growth of illiterate people again and again. So they are feeding into that. So I agree to that. That there should be much direct focus on these kind of issues.
I just want to say something regarding Khalda, what she said, Dr. Khalda. Nobody's against, people like us want against operation of the Lal Masjid, but I think it's critical that crisis decisions should be made on time. When you delay them by 6 to 7 months, then they are not effective. And the opinions have changed by them and they are made into heroes. So I think Musharraf government really suffered from this problem of the right decision making at the time when it should have been made. It should have been made in January instead of 7 months later. I think that's very important for all governments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. And I think you're right, Salma Bibi. I think in our annual review, Dr. Ghosh, we perhaps should have specifically acknowledged the role of the demographic shift rural-urban shift and this huge bulge that is developing ungovernable cities and towns. G. Any others? G, please go ahead.
Sir, it's a pleasure to be here, and we are grateful to SPDC for enlightening the views of the people and giving them an opportunity to think about it. But most importantly, since I have the pleasure of being the student of both the professors, Dr. Arif Kazmi Saab and Dr. Khalid Abbas, 18 years back, long time.
Just let everyone know your good name.
Yeah, I'm Najib Ashraf. I presently work for a bank. I'm looking after the operations. Presumably, in our opinion, things have never been handled in the last few decades. It's a backlash of our one policy. It's not something directly related to the Lal Masjid. It's a backlash. We were infiltrating within their borders. We were going across the borders. We were training them, and ultimately, once it has gone the reverse, it's hitting us again. But in my opinion, I would strongly urge upon this honest PDC that once you have called on people from different areas, from different walks of life, you please call on few people in the different, pertaining to the different social sectors, so that at least your opinion can be taken out to other people at the other different forums. आप यही बात करते हैं, it goes up, it doesn't go up, it doesn't go beyond your boundaries, it doesn't go to the people down the line having a downward spiral effect. So I would request you just to try to spill it over to other people around. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to comment on that?
It's okay, sir. A very small and a very quick one. See, I think what I feel is that we try to justify everything because of the, by saying that it is the backlash of the Afghan policy, and that is why I specifically looked into the internal and the regional dynamics. There are two, and I call it a twin threat. So there are two very clearly set of developments which have taken place. And I think we cannot absolve ourselves of the responsibility of the respective failures that have been there. Partially, yes, backlash, regional instability, yes, very absolutely. Intrusiveness, intervention on the part of the US in the region, yes, all right. But can we forget about the bandwagoning concept, which is a hardcore reality in the case of the internal dynamic? No. I think we would be lying to ourselves if we stop thinking about what were the other contributing factors within this society which has placed us where we are placed today. The other thing is that you were talking about involving all segments. We do that very cautiously and very carefully. We will also be going for smaller cities and with smaller groups. And the other thing is we very extensively disseminate our publications, both in Urdu and in English. Iski executive summary has already been translated into Urdu, or wo Sindhi may be translated hogi. So we always
It's very
do
important to translate it into Sindhi in these days, so that they understand it even in Sindhi if they can't understand it.
No. We've taken that point absolutely, and the board has taken note of that also previously. G, please go ahead.
I am Nizamuddin Nizamani. I do contribute my analysis in different newspapers. I am here to see the report, but I wonder the impression so far I have taken from your presentations is that you have taken the aspect of security in terms of KPK and Afghan war. I wonder if you people also have touched the prolonged political issues like Balochistan, and also the other aspects of terror, like sectarian terror, where we can see in Karachi, whole the lot of Sunni Tariq was just wiped out in one bomb blast, where scores of scholars, uncontroversial, non-controversial scholars like Mufti Nizamuddin Shahuzai, many Shia scholars and the doctors were killed. It's my question. I hope you have touched, but please, have you touched these aspects as well? Because these are also the chunk of the terror in our country. Thank you.
Very rightly pointed out, and it was expected from you, Nizam Saab. क्या नाम है आपको?
वही आपने लिखा।
भाई आपको इतनी अच्छी तरह मैं जानती हूँ.
His Excellency
हाँ,
Nizamuddin Nizamani.
Yes, I know him very well. He's like a friend to me. The point is, see, for any research and for any good research, it is extremely important to keep the focus. You know, it was extremely difficult for us because Balochistan is no less important for us, and neither are the other countries. Of course, we dedicated an entire chapter to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa because that is directly a war area, war zone which is there. And that is why an entire chapter was given to it. Balochistan, because it was for a very simple reason that this terrorism and the bomb blast and other things, there are other dynamics which are added to it. So we cannot brush, we cannot paint everything with one single brush. Of course, the importance is no less important. But we were looking at the security crisis purely in the context of the post-9/11 development. That was the parameter that was identified. And there, no way, Balochistan is altogether a different story. Of course, there are extra other neighboring countries and there are extra regional actors, and the regional actors which have got the small and the nasty roles which they do continue to play time to time. But the very dynamics of the Balochistan situation is extremely difficult. So it's not like it's not important, but very cautiously to maintain the focus. And there can be yet another very comprehensive thing on the case of Balochistan also. Number one, this is it. I think that's what you want.
Sectarian.
Just to add to that, I mean, we have not discussed in detail, but there is a table on chapter 3 which gives some statistics. For example, just to quote that, the act of political violences increased from 88 in numbers in 2008 to 233 in 2000. In terms of killing, in political violence, for example, 162% were killed in 2008, and this in all of Pakistan. And this has increased to 660% killed in the political violence. Similarly, the intertribal clashes, I mean the ethno-political or ethno-sectarian clashes, they also increased from 191 in 2008 to 214. So these are the statistics we have not discussed in detail, but your point is well taken.
There's a remarkable post, that microphone is a Dijega. Nizamani Sahib, there's a remarkable paradox I noticed, if you also saw it, in the data given for increase in expenditure on public order and safety. Whereas all three other provinces registered phenomenal increases. The data for Balochistan shows that in the year 2000 and 2001, it was 11. In the year 2009-10, it is still 11. While the situation has deteriorated phenomenally, particularly after Nawab Bhukti's killing. So it's a very strange anomaly, and one should probe further to find out if you have some.
Yeah, it's because much of the security-related expenditures are federal in Balochistan, not the provincial.
It should actually strengthen provincial capacity, and that's the main grouse that the Frontier Constabulary and other federal agencies play a disproportionate role. Ji, please go ahead.
My name is Amanullah Bashar. I'm from Pakistan and Gulf economies. I appreciate, first of all, your hard work and basically focused on the human sufferings. But I would like to add here